Welcome to the first Expert Speaker Series as part of the HSMAI Foundation's efforts to reach out into academia. My name is Rob Portnick, and I am an associate professor at the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University. And I'm joined with my colleague and co-host.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Breffney Noon. I'm an associate professor at the School of Hospitality Management at Penn State. And Rob and I both currently serve on HSMAI's foundation board. And this expert series is part of our remit and our mission as part of the foundation. And Rob, I'll have you explain a little bit more about our mission and objectives.
Great. Thanks, Breffney. The main goal of the speaker series is to introduce faculty some of the latest thinking in the commercial space in terms of sales, marketing, and revenue management, and specifically to bring experts in who can help us understand what some of the pressing problems are, what some of the new media and the new innovations are, and also what are some of the applications that we can bring into the classroom so we can stay as current as possible when we're teaching our students. And as we know in the industry, and as this slide suggests, that our students are essential, and there's the pipeline for the commercial space in the hospitality industry. So as up to date as we can be in teaching our students, it's going to benefit them as they're looking to join this industry and create careers in hospitality commercial.
And with that, we'd like to introduce you to our first speaker in the series, Dr. Kelly McGuire. Kelly is Managing Principal of Hospitality at ZS Associates, where she's responsible for helping global hospitality clients improve their commercial strategy and operations, and to find impactful uses for data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to support their commercial strategy. Prior to joining ZS, Kelly served as a Senior Vice President of Revenue Management, Distribution, and Direct Marketing for MGM Resorts International, where she oversaw strategy and execution of revenue management, distribution, and direct marketing for MGM's Las Vegas resorts. And she also guided the development, system selection, and implementation planning for MGM's revenue management and distribution technology roadmap. Prior to joining MGM, Kelly held leadership roles at Wyndham Destination Network and SAS, the global analytics company. Kelly is an author and analytics evangelist. She is passionate about helping hospitality companies infuse science into the art of hospitality with big data and analytics through strategic investments in technology, talent, and business process redesign. She is the author of 2 books on analytics and hospitality, Hotel Pricing in a Social World, and The Analytic Hospitality Executive. She holds an MMH and a PhD in Revenue Management from Cornell School of Hotel Administration and currently serves on the Americas Board for HSMAI. And she's also the recent recipient in 2024 of the Vanguard Award for Achievement in Revenue Management. And this award honors industry leaders that have left an indelible mark on the field of pricing and revenue optimization in the hospitality industry. So with that introduction, I'm going to pass you over to Dr. McGuire, who's going to speak a little bit today about the use of AI in our industry. Kelly, you're very welcome, and thank you for being the first speaker in our series.
Thanks very much, Breffney and Rob. It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm fortunate to be able to speak about something I'm extremely passionate about. So we're going to structure this today. I've got a presentation that we've actually used at several industry events to help industry really understand what this world of AI is. And then I'm going to actually walk through with all of you how the commercial function within hospitality is currently using some of these AI applications. And so we'll do that for a little bit, and then I'll bring Rob and Breffney back, and we'll have a little chat about what's here. So that's our plan for the day. And I call this a pragmatist guide to using AI in hospitality. And so we're going to speak in very plain language to make sure everybody kind of follows this very complex topic. Just a quick little bit on ZS. So ZS is a global professional services firm. We actually uniquely specialize in strategies and solutions that target the commercial function. So I look after our hospitality clients. As you heard from Breffney, I'm career hospitality, but I have the advantage of collaborating with colleagues that serve a wide variety of industries. So our perspective comes from seeing a lot of the challenges that commercial functions face across businesses and industries. All right, let's talk about what AI is and what we're talking about today. So everybody got really excited about AI about 3 years ago, and for very good reason. And that was at the time where these new generative AI models were introduced, and what we like to call kind of AI 2.0. What was exciting about this, if you look at sort of in contrast to where we were before, is that here we have expanded the scope of what this AI can do for us. It can complete a lot more tasks than it ever did before. Very importantly, now the AI can actually learn without human supervision. So when we think about prior generations of AI, which has been around for 40 plus years or longer, this AI really required a lot of human training and supervision. Now these new models, you hand it a big stack of data and it can kind of train itself and learn on the go. And it is much more creative and much more inventive than these applications of AI before. In sort of the narrow AI 1.0 world, these models were set a specific task, and they did their very best to come up with the optimal solution to the task at hand. Today, these models can create and invent and think about things in a different way. And as we all have felt over the last little bit, this is opening up some really exciting possibilities for the usage of AI, but also presenting some challenges as well. And so what we can really see today when it comes to AI being able to replicate human actions, and that's sort of the mark of artificial intelligence, is that now AI is starting to look a little bit more human. It can sense, it can understand, and it can create, as I said before. And this is the evolution. Now, we are not at Skynet yet. These AI models are still they're still a bit immature. They still are built for purpose. They still they're not quite at the replicate everything that humans do. And so we're going to learn a little bit today about why these models, what limitations these models have, and how to sort of best leverage them. So no need to worry about the robots taking over yet, but we do open up a wide world of possibility with this next generation of AI as well. Now, there's been a lot of sort of justifiable help or justifiable hype around this over the last little bit. Everyone's talking about the potential here, and we're really sort of expecting that these solutions become smarter and faster and cheaper, and they can empower a broader scope of folks, and allowing humans to sort of refocus themselves on these higher value activities and take away a lot of this routine, mundane work that's on people's plates. We should have these expectations, and we should have this level of excitement. I think what we've seen, in the 2 to 3 years or so that these models have been on the scene is with every iteration of new releases of these models, they become more stable, better understood, and more mature. And so what I see is, even in this, they exploded on the scene, but even in this short last couple of years, the stability and maturity of these models, combined with the understanding that people have about some of this potential and the use cases we've seen, mean that we really are at the point as an industry where a broader range of companies and broader range of personas can start to take advantage of these models with a little bit less risk than we saw with some of these previous generations. Although really happy to talk about, again, kind of what we've seen and how we use these responsibly. So all this momentum, all this excitement, even from over the last 3 years, even still today, we see a lot of organizations saying, awesome, we've got to get on board or we're going to be left behind. What should we be doing with AI? Let's get some AI. Let's bring some AI in. And yet so this is the question we're asking, is how can we and should we be doing more with AI? But what we actually find when you look at these large-scale technology transformations that change the way people work and change the way people approach their jobs is that they have a kind of a quite low success rate when it comes down to it. So lots of excitement and not a lot of pull through. And why is this? It's because in a lot of cases, people get excited about a shiny object and they have this AI hammer and every problem looks like a nail. And in the end, that's not actually the most responsible or pragmatic way to bring AI into the organization. Organizations need to stay focused on the business problem they're trying to solve and what tool or technology is the best tool or technology that can be applied to that business problem. Now, you can extend the impact of solutions in a really exciting way, leveraging these new tools. But if you aren't being very laser focused and practical about what exactly it is that you're trying to solve and prioritizing that based on the impact, you could find yourself with the shiny object solution that wasn't really worth the time and energy that you put into implementing it. And suddenly the organization becomes a lot less excited about future investment in AI. So how is it that we can really identify of all the business pains, where is the right use case for something like Gen AI? And there are about 5 tests that we suggest that you can kind of run through for a problem that becomes a really good, then becomes a really good candidate for an application of this next generation of AI. And you can see the 5 here. I just alluded to the first one. If you're going to try to bring something new like this into an organization, you want to start with something that's well-defined and that has high impact. So you know what you're trying to solve and you know the impact of the solution, and there is high ROI tied to it. It also needs to operate at a very large scale. These problems train on, they really are, kind of solved at scale. So you need scale for this. Otherwise, it's not worth really the time and energy. You also want unstructured data behind this. So large volumes of unstructured data where it's really hard even for a human reading through all of this unstructured data to identify some of these core patterns. That's what this AI is really good at. So unstructured data. And you also need something with high novelty. So you don't want the algorithms coming up with the same solution over and over again. These algorithms are really, remember, they're replicating human creativity. So novelty is really important here. That each time the inputs are going to be a little different and you need the outputs to be a little different. And very crucially, we talked about the maturity of these solutions. They are not yet at the point where they should be running on their own. And so you need a real easy human oversight, a real easy human in the loop. So you want to look for those partnership opportunities for people and the technology to work together. So humans can oversee the technology, and the technology is enabling the humans. Now, through the course of the rest of this presentation, I've got a lot of examples of good uses of Gen AI and places where this technology is super impactful. But before I get into that across the commercial function, I want to do a little myth busting here, because I do see 2 common places that people's brains go to immediately when they think about how we're going to use Gen AI. And we really actually don't see these as great uses for AI. And here they are. So anything having to do with pricing and revenue management, people get super excited about how this new technology will impact pricing. And there is a lot of AI embedded in pricing algorithms. There's a lot of analytics used in hospitality, and those algorithms have been part of the calculating optimal prices for hotels for a while. Some of them got rebranded into AI, and machine learning, but they're there. But here's the problem with pricing. Pricing data and the data that is most stable for pricing is typically structured. So you don't need Gen AI for that. It works best on unstructured data. And crucially importantly, creativity in pricing isn't really an asset. You get that one optimal price, you know what you should be charging to generate the most revenue for the hotel. And playing around with that, not necessarily the best idea. I would also argue that customer-facing interactions are not the best place for experimenting with AI 2.0 with Gen AI right now. This is where a lot of people go because there's so much volume of this, especially in hospitality. So you really want a chatbot, right? But here's the problem. You unleash that chatbot on all of these, the wide variety of customer interactions, and the human oversight becomes really difficult. So QC then becomes a challenge. And even still today, there's a high risk of hallucination in some of these models, that the AI will simply get it wrong, a lot because our data is not great and all I can see is the data. So where there's this high risk of hallucination, you do not want your customers exposed to incorrect information. And we've seen some really dramatic examples of where that's come back to bite companies. So for all the good, I see these as not great uses. Quick word too here about kind of this notion of human oversight and human partnership. Today, the really high value cases of AI is where both classic AI and next gen AI is where the AI can actually take some of those more repetitive, more high volume tasks off of the plate of humans, even those that require creativity and outputs. And you can leave the humans to focus on the most strategic and value-added tasks. And it's when the partnership between the AI taking care of the mundane and the humans being focused on the strategic value add that you really start to see this magic. Because the AI is feeding the humans are evaluating the outputs and incorporating that into their strategic decision-making. That's where we truly see the magic happening. And when commercial organizations look at this opportunity, what they typically see is a huge opportunity here by optimizing their workforce and the activities and focus of those teams to really do three core things. You can improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of commercial teams and the outcomes really become improving employee engagement. Now, I put that one first because it's not the one that we always think of. But if you think about all the things that you have to do in your day and which are the worst ones that really drag you down, likely the ones that are most mundane, most repetitive, and tend to be the ones that kind of suck the energy out of you. If something else was taking care of that, so you could stay focused on those high order tasks, you'd probably love your job even just a little bit more. And so we see a real opportunity here to improve employee engagement through strategic use of some of this technology. You can increase efficiency of teams. You can certainly take away a lot of if you take away a lot of this manual work, you need fewer people to do the work, the team becomes more productive. You can also improve performance. So you can get better work done. You can improve accuracy. You can drive satisfaction of your stakeholders and uncover new revenue opportunities. And what I find kind of interesting when commercial organizations are thinking about where they're going to see the value for AI, typically any AI solution and how it gets designed and implemented in their org is going to be some balance between these three items. Because if you're really, for example, pushing efficiency and you think, okay, well, I'm going to improve the productivity of my team, so I can reduce headcount from 30 to 5. But then those 5 people are just working like dogs to take up the work of the rest of the team. You're going to have an impact on employee engagement. If you think about, so what's the balance between those two things? If you think about, for example, a revenue manager who suddenly, through automating some of the routine and mundane stuff that they do, you've given them 2 or 3 hours a day back. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to revenue manage more hotels? Or do you want them to do a better job of revenue managing the hotels that they have? And somewhere in between those two goals is the answer. And so again, we talk about these high ROI examples or understanding the use case or impact. You can see here just from what these outcomes are, how important it is for the business to have very specific targets in mind, because all of your goals here are going to impact how that AI is actualized or implemented and which problems that you tackle first. All right, so that's how I usually talk to industry about AI. But I thought I would just, with my remaining time here, talk a little bit about kind of by sort of discipline within the commercial function, where we see applications of AI, and then give you some quick case studies about how some of this new stuff is being used in hospitality. So I have examples here from the real world. These are things that I have seen clients use or used myself in commercial disciplines. We could start with revenue management. As you know, I love revenue management, got a revenue management background. Now, we already talked about this from a pricing perspective. Classic AI, even some of it that was rebranded from forecasting to machine learning when AI became very popular, has been used in revenue management in the past, and it's good at really learning and understanding data better so that forecast accuracy improves. It's very good at recognizing patterns in both structured and unstructured data, so you can see the AI doing things like pattern recognition, so it can identify and maybe tag a special event. So within that structured data, we've seen some great uses of classic AI for the last decade or so. Where we see, remember I told you I didn't love it in pricing, but where we see AI in this next gen really impacting revenue management teams is when we think about efficiency. So if you look at what revenue management teams do today, they do a lot of manual work. They have to, they do these revenue strategy calls. They have to write up the summary of the call, the actions that they recommended, what next steps are for the teams. They send out emails with commentary on reports. They build a lot of reports. And then of course they have to explain why they recommend and justify why the recommendations are what they are, why the system is recommending what it recommends. So lots of manual stuff that requires them to sort of summarize unstructured data or text data. This is a place where Gen AI really shines and can take some of this manual but thinking work and creative work off of the revenue management teams. And one of the things that I'm most particularly excited about, and this is something where we're drinking our own Kool-Aid at ZS. We actually we use this in our revenue management services team, is this notion of how do you evaluate how good a revenue manager, how well the revenue manager did on a revenue strategy call. So especially at scale. So this solution is targeted at large revenue services teams. So most of the big brands have teams of several hundred people that are providing revenue management services for their franchised estate. And what you see happening here is you get 200 revenue managers. They're conducting, they may have a portfolio of 10, 15, 20 hotels. With some sort of responsibility to conduct a revenue strategy call for all those hotels. And leadership is responsible for making sure that the revenue manager is delivering high quality recommendations, that they have good relationships with the on-property teams, that they're adhering to their SOPs and their KPIs. And so if you are a leadership that is running that volume of hotels, you're, as leadership, spending a lot of time sitting and listening in on strategy calls so that you can evaluate and coach your teams. And it becomes a problem that's a little bit too hard to to scale to. So what you are now able to do with the AI is you get a transcript of the call from the Zoom recording, run it through the algorithm. The AI analyzes the interaction among team members and comes up with a score for against whatever KPIs it is that you want to benchmark. And so the AI is replacing the human ears of the supervisor on that call, and then creating benchmarks for these revenue strategy calls. So this takes so much time off of leadership's plate, but still gives leadership a bespoke and unbiased report of what the revenue manager has been doing on this call according to the rubrics that are important to leadership. And so they can not only have a good handle on how the revenue manager is doing on all their calls, but they also can create some personalized coaching and interaction with the revenue managers. As a side benefit of a solution like this solution can also surface key topics that are coming up on these calls. So if all of a sudden, all of the GMs in the East region are concerned about forecast accuracy or a certain event strategy or something that's happening, you can quickly detect where there's maybe an opportunity for training, an opportunity to adjust an algorithm or an approach, or do some kind of different interactions or reporting for properties. So again, we have a hugely impactful problem. We're saving leadership time and we're improving the quality of calls. We've got unstructured data. It's all that free-form text for the calls. And a high need for creativity here because every call is different, and the AI needs to understand and react to the call. Something that I'm super excited about. We never really had the potential for before. All right, moving on to marketing now. If you think about kind of classic AI, marketing had some really strong use cases for, again, large volumes of data, structured or unstructured, for pattern recognition, things like recommendation engines, things like microsegmentation, things like next best action. Now we see when we've got this next generation of AI, you can start to do things like generate copy and respond to different customer service inquiries and loyalty and fraud detection around loyalty programs. And you can start to really deeply analyze customer feedback and identify opportunities to create new services or to streamline existing processes. So do have a couple of quick case studies as examples for this. So we worked with a large global airline, actually, and they were having a satisfaction issue on Sundays. So when they looked at the raw metrics, all they could see is, for some reason, our satisfaction scores dip on Sundays. We're not really sure why. So we took volumes of customer feedback that was provided from Sunday travel, ingested it, and really understood at a deep level what was happening with customer service. And basically, what you kind of had here was a lot of people traveling with families that weren't being well served by the way that seats were assigned and the way that the airport experience worked. And you had inexperienced staff working on Sundays because the higher seniority folks were able to take weekends off. And so by understanding, some of these root causes that were very unique to Sundays that they never had visibility in before, this airline could dramatically improve satisfaction. So you're getting to, now that this AI can ingest and understand the causes here, it surfaces those root causes for you. You don't have to tell anymore the solution what to look for. So again, we got a lot of high volume here and some need for novel or creative output from this. And lots of different use cases sort of across marketing as well. Another place where I find some interesting opportunities with the next generation of AI is within sales organizations. So we've seen classic uses of classic AI. So next best action works here, lead scoring works here. So we've seen some of this for a bit. Now we're starting to see some interesting opportunities to apply the next generation of AI. I've recently been a part of some conversations around some capabilities that we're calling virtual sales rep trainer. So you can train the AI to do a role play call where the AI acts like a client, even a very specific client if you have good CRM on your clients. So the sales leaders can actually practice an interaction with a client and do some role play before they go into the real client interactions. Now, there's a whole bunch of different use cases for this, obviously. First is just this practice. Hey, I want to see how the client would react if I take certain approaches. But there's also coaching opportunities here too. So the AI can actually score the rep on the interaction, not just on things like, hey, did they bring up the new program, but also on things like tone and empathy. So were they able to match the customer's needs? Did they demonstrate understanding? Was this a positive call? And were they enthusiastic about the product or service they were selling? So this is not only can reps be sort of more aware of their approach and try out different techniques, but you can again get back to that more bespoke coaching from leadership. So something really exciting that again these large sales organizations you can start to scale across. And then one of the other things, of course, that I get excited about is this whole RFP process. So we all know this is highly burdensome. There's a lot of paperwork to fill out, and response rates are really low when leads are transmitted to properties have to respond, and then we have to get back to the guest. Because of the capabilities now in AI 2.0, not only can you automate the workflow, but you can automate responses to all kinds of questions that these that the RFP submitters are willing to ask, both the kind of the standard ones and also custom ones in whatever format they're asking. And so now all you need is a sales leader or someone from the property to review the answers instead of having to create them, either create them over and over or interpret what the guest wants and create an answer to it. So lots of power, lots of opportunity to up your salespeople's games. Actually, one of my favorite examples in the use of some of this Gen AI stuff in a sales process is some work that we did with a luxury hospitality company, where we helped to I'll tell you what I really like about this, because this is the perfect example of the partnership between the sales leader and the AI. So now we have these customer service agents at a luxury hotel brand that accepts emails from clients who are looking to make reservations. These agents are managing transactions that could be several $100,000 in value. So the original process, they get an email from the agent, from a client, from whoever, and they have to interpret what that guest is asking for, go into all of the various selling systems that we deploy, check on rates and availability for the dates and the properties that the guest asked for, check on availability of experience reservations, check on the all that availability, and then pull together alternatives, right, to sell to that, and before they can get back to the client. None of that work is client facing. And so what we actually built for this company was some automation functionality bespoke that detected that the email had come in, passed it off to these AI algorithms to structure the unstructured text from the email. So pulling out from whatever it is that the customer felt like saying, what exactly are they asking for? Which dates, which properties, which experiences? And then that structure would get passed off to bots who would go looking in all those back office systems to create the quote, and the quote got passed to an agent. And that process was 10 minutes from when we received the email. So now the agents are going back in, reviewing these quotes, and then completing the interaction with the client on the other end of the correspondence, whether it's an email response or a phone call or whatever it is. Agent facing time now, where the agents so instead of that back office stuff, they're actually guest facing. This was, you can see here massive reductions in handling time, but also massive increases in revenue when you let the agents do what the agents do best. So to me, this is the perfect example of the real value that these new AI algorithms can provide. But the real value of that partnership between the person and the technology, letting the person do what the person does best, the technology do what the technology does best. We've got a human in the loop here that can make sure that everything that comes out of these algorithms are correct. And you have a high impact outcome where you get these agents who are generating more revenue because they have more time to do it. Look, this was just a quick flyby of the possibilities, but I wanted to give you a little bit of flavor of how commercial organizations are thinking about implementing this stuff. But I think I'll stop there, and we'll get a little conversation with Breffney and Rob, who can help me understand how you might be wondering how you can get your students to participate in all this fun stuff that's happening. So anyway, hello, friends.
Hi, Kelly. That was super informative. I think, thinking from a student perspective of being able to frame it very simply, but very powerfully around those 5 criteria that have to be met. I think, with so much hype around Gen AI and its use, both from the industry side and the consumer side, I think the framing of it around those 5 criteria, and then infusing on top of that examples from across commercials, so looking at revenue, looking at marketing, and looking at sales, and see in the examples that you gave how those 5 criteria were very clearly met. And I suppose I'll wear my revenue management hat for a moment, and I thank you for talking about pricing and how it really doesn't fit a Gen AI solution. And, as you noted, we've used AI solutions for forecasting and so on. They're still very powerful, but there's certain parts of revenue that it's just not appropriate to use it. So I think that for me was a big takeaway. And Rob, I might pass it to you for some comments, given obviously your marketing and sales background. What was your perspective on what Kelly shared?
Yeah, it was great, Kelly, as always. And A couple of things that popped out for me, and a lot of it is the way I see students interacting with AI right now, right? So they're sort of training themselves. Unfortunately, a lot of it's with our own projects that we have to completely redo, right? And so, for example, we'll do a case study, and the students are using AI, and they're using prompts that maybe are in the case study, and you start to see very similar assignments being returned, right? And so, what I worry about is that if they're preparing for careers, let's say in marketing, and you made the statement, which I wrote down, that the algorithms are replicating human creativity, which suggests the possibility of kind of a regression towards the mean if students, like we see with assignments, are asking the same prompts, they're getting the same output, and they're doing nothing with it except cutting and pasting it as if it's their own answer. And have you seen with any of your clients a similar problem when you get into marketing, especially the creativity component? That if they're asking AI to generate, for example, a social media post or to come up with images for a website, and you start to see, especially if it's a public AI source, you start to see, well, that website looks just like that one because they're all, do you see that as a risk that the creativity becomes almost overly democratized or homogenized because of the models?
Yeah, I think no, this is an excellent point, Rob, and I get it can go in a few different directions with this. They are working on models now that can actually replicate someone's voice. So if you fed all of my articles into the AI and then asked it to write an AI in my voice, it's starting to get pretty close to being able to get down to that individual level. But we're definitely not there yet. And so right now, my view, when I read copy that was created by a person that has a particular voice, or when I read copy that's created by, I can usually tell what's AI. It still is a little flat. And so I think, I'd like to believe that we're never going to get to the point where that kind of diversity is there. So this is why I believe that it starts with the faculty to in this exact scenario you're talking about, to say, hey, you brainstorm with the AI. You let the AI give you some ideas that you might not have thought of, or it might have taken you 3 hours to get to. And you use that as a jumping off point. But the final deliverable, the final kind of crafting of this thing has to come from you. If we want to maintain some more of the authenticity or the next thing. Because remember, and this is kind of the second part of this, the AI is only based on the data that it can see. And so there is a limitation. Now there's, my God, unfathomable amounts of data, but it runs into a limitation eventually. It's not, until our brains download on the internet, there's still stuff in here that isn't there. And some of the stuff that's there isn't great. So you talked about images, Rob, but one of my colleagues did this very impactful demo for us about some of the limitations of AI. So he wrote a prompt that said, wrote a prompt to have the AI create an ad for a banking service. And so he showed us 2 ads, and there was groups of people in the 2 ads, and one group of people was mostly white, couple of other faces in it. The other group of people was all African American, all Black faces. And he said, there's only one word difference between the 2 prompts we used to create this. What do you think it is? And it turned out that in that second ad, the one with all Black faces, they create a diverse group of people. Okay. So the data that the internet was looking at, that the AI was looking at, was biased. And we all know that is not diversity. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So now if you just pop those on a website, you would make you'd make an error, right? It just wouldn't be. So this is where, that thing could fast forward you to somewhere. But as a person, you have to know how, you have to understand where the biases may be in the data, and you do have to apply your own thinking on it too. So I would say those are kind of, faculty has a huge responsibility here to make sure that the students understand the limitations of the data and where in the process of creating something the AI is best served. And if you do that for your students and send them out to us that way, you really help us get through some stuff that we might have tripped over otherwise.
Mhm.
Yeah, I might actually tell you a little story about how I've used AI in the classroom. So, like Kelly, I'm firmly behind using it for brainstorming and helping them to get the ball rolling and trying to think outside the box. So, just this past semester, I gave my students a couple of case studies to work on. So, very context specific, very specific problems to an organization, and asked them to come up with pricing solutions and segmentation and pricing solutions. And I didn't say anything. I didn't say whether they could use AI or couldn't use it. So, about half the class, no, three-quarters of the class actually did it on their own. And the other quarter of the class gave us an AI generated solution. And what they all learned from that process was, depending on how you present the problem, AI will just give you the rote answers and the generic answers to the problem. So, for example, I had one restaurant that I described as having a high demand. They had no waiting area at their front desk and they had no bar area. And these groups that used AI were all about overbook, overbook, overbook. There was nowhere to put the people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, you're not even thinking about how you're applying it to the specific context that you're in. And Gen AI can't always do that for you, depending on what prompts you're giving it and how you're using it yourself. So it was a great example. So from then on, they all stopped using Gen AI as part of their submissions because most of the time, the generic answers that they were getting wasn't really helping them to solve the problem. So it's kind of interesting that I made them go through it and then read everybody else's reports and identify what the issues were. So I'm a firm believer. I use it myself for brainstorming. But there's a certain point where you say, now I need myself to do it.
Kelly, as a follow-up, do you advise clients, and this may be a little more in the weeds than where you usually work with your clients, but do you advise them to give credit to the AI when they're generating something? In other words, like who owns, if you create something, copy, a storyboard, a narrative, or even an image, and it's AI generated, who gets credit for that? Like it's almost a copyright question. And do you
Yeah.
advise clients on being transparent to say this was generated
Yeah.
by AI or?
So I am not a lawyer, so I can't advise on copyright. And there's a couple of issues to that one, Rob. So how I would think you get around some of that is if so large organizations where we do this, many of them we've created our own internal AI models that are based on that have been trained right on that public domain, but only see ours data, and they're walled off from the public internet. So if something is created within our environment and our data with our brand standards and our voice and our way of talking, it's ours. And it doesn't matter if the AI generated or not, because it's coming from our data. This is why it's so important to understand when you should and shouldn't be using the public models versus internal. So that's how I would think of it. And that's how you can be more sure that it's not going to go steal someone else's stuff and use it, right? So you're not treading on that. Now, in terms of giving the AI credit, this is, I think, a really interesting area. And I know some folks are working on this, but something we have to figure out in the future. So giving the AI credit for creating ad copy or an image, if you're using your brand voice, your whatever it is, then I don't see a lot of difference there, right? So I probably wouldn't. However, would you tell the AI that it is talking to, if you have a chat bot, would you tell the guest that they're talking to AI versus not? Would you, these companies that are starting to use, trip recommenders or whatever, like, are you explicit that this recommendation is generated by AI? And how does the customer feel about that when they see that? And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting work done in the lines between when a customer is comfortable being 100% guided by AI versus not, and how much information they want to know. Like, do you want to know if your doctor is using Gen AI to help diagnose a problem? Maybe, like, is it different than if your travel agent has created your itinerary 100% with AI? Like, I mean, in that example of the luxury brand, the people were talking to an agent. So in the end, that final recommendation was vetted by the agent, but it wasn't created by the agent. Does that matter to the customer or not? Is that different than the first example I gave? So to me, there's going to be a lot, when it comes to crediting, I think there is that issue of, yeah, there's going to be some copyright law there, but if you're using your data and your voice, that might be lesser. But when some of this stuff is customer facing, at what point do the customers want to be, care? When does it matter to them? I think that's super interesting too. But Breffney, I think that's speaking back to revenue management. I think that's going to be like, fairness in revenue management too. Like, got used to it happening. So when it was first introduced, it wasn't fair that you and I paid a different price for the same room. Now it's like, oh, well, you booked ahead and, I got a corporate rate. So of course it was different. Right. And now it's fine. Ish. So I don't know. But I see this as a super interesting area where we started doing research, but there's a lot more that could be done to understand customer reaction.
Can I piggyback at that for a moment and ask you another thing from a customer perspective? So I've heard a lot of chat from colleagues in industry with regard to concerns. So you talked just a moment ago about Gen AI creating itineraries and so on. And, you can go into Gen AI, I don't know whether either of you have, and ask for an itinerary and ask for suggested hotels, and they pop up a couple of hotels as part of their itinerary for you. We're so used to things like pay for placement on the internet. What are your thoughts on how we think about how Gen AI comes up with these suggestions when we don't have a pay-to-play situation going on? And how do we make sure that our property shows up when Breffney Noon does a search for Peru?
Yeah. This right now is what should be keeping every marketer up at night, right? So this is the game that gets changed, because all of that, all the placement, all the copy, all the benefits of SEO driving demand to your direct channels are now possibly going to go away. And if we now start having agents that are going to do, potentially represent you in this, then you're never even, the person's not even putting their eyeballs on it anyway, because their agent is doing all the booking, and they're going to do it in a very specific way according to whatever it is instructions they've been given. So yeah, this should be keeping marketers up at night. Now I am not one, so I don't know how the mechanisms are going to work here, but somebody better figure that out. And obviously they are working on it, but you're already seeing this with the Google summaries that has started happening, where now you don't have to go to a website to get the information. And you've got the reference there, so you know where it came from. You can decide if it's credible. But that persists, and it absolutely changes the way that we market and how we make sure we show up places we need to be. So I'd be worried about that.
Yeah,
got enough problems. I'm going to let other folks worry about it. But yeah, I'd be thinking about it. And marketing professors, you can't, you gotta, this does impact the curriculum, right, Rob? Because it's going to be a different world when you get out there in terms of how you execute in this. And we just figured out like the SEO world, Breffney, if you could even say that.
Yeah.
And typically academic research lags industry. So this is going to be one of those where the model is going to be out in front of our tests of what's most effective. So exciting and scary, although it'll keep professors busy. So that's always a good thing.
That's good.
Maybe a last question, Kelly, as we start to think about helping our students prepare for their careers if they're coming out in commercial. And, what's always kind of made them stand apart, of course, is their academic performance and maybe internships they've had where they've really stood out. There's a genuine concern among students that some of the roles that they would have gone into, and I think RM is a good example, or even social media, if they're thinking about being a community manager or something like that, they could be obsolete because of AI before they walk out the door with their diploma. I think some of this dovetails back with what you were saying about how the AI partnership has to work.
Yeah.
But what would be your guidance for students if they're trying to think about the role of AI as they start to launch their careers, and how they can make their careers at least not necessarily bulletproof, but feel a little more confident coming out that they're going to bring value to a commercial organization?
It's funny that you say that, Rob, because actually when I talk to even my dinosaur peers, and you can be dinosaur real fast these days, because this was 3 years. We are about, we welcomed a social native generation just recently, and now we're about to welcome an AI native generation, the folks who just didn't operate in any kind of environment without it. Our concern on our end is that our jobs and our technology are going to be too boring and too antiquated for this generation. So they're going to come in and go, this is what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of these jobs are going to go away, but what goes away about them is all the mundane, the routine,
Yeah.
this, you know, we call it the swivel chair integration, where you read something from here and type it in over here. Like, to me, I think what the silver lining in this might be for the students is that the jobs are going to get better, because we have lost people to industries that are doing that have better technology, more, you know, interesting work in marketing, especially. You know, so as fast as we can use some of these tools to take away some of that stuff, I think we'll be able to attract the best and brightest students. So I can understand that fear, but if they really understand this world, they're actually going to help us craft jobs in a way that are better for them, and we'll best take advantage of their talents, because that is what we are worried about. We are worried that they're not going to like our jobs because they're going to feel like, you know, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, you're telling us to just let them use AI like crazy while they're in school.
No, God, no. No, I, you know, because I am, but back to the beginning of our prior conversation, and really that, like, the favor that you will do as faculty is train the students to use AI responsibly.
Yeah.
And to really show us how it can, you know, augment and add to human capability in the workplace and in the classroom. So unfortunately, even though you just said the opposite, Rob, we have put faculty on the front lines here, because you're the first ones that are going to see this generation, and they're going to be the most comfortable with this when they hit you before they hit us. But I think, you know, the big favor that you all can do is, yeah, they should be leveraging this thing, but can you help put some guardrails around so that they don't have habits that we won't even understand, let alone recognize bad when they hit us, but instead they can teach us. I mean, I you know, one quick anecdote, you know, as we wrap, but I was talking to you know, a lot of my clients now are piloting Microsoft Copilot in their day-to-day. And so, you know, I was asking how it was going, and we're trying to, first of all, we're doing the same, and we're trying to catch up. And, you know, one of the, I mean, there's, so I'm talking to this leader, and he's like, yeah, so, okay, it's been really good because, you know, it'll record and summarize calls, and that's pretty good. So that's useful, right? So I could, if I had to miss a call or whatever, like, but really, like, it seems like the best kind of thing it does is it, you know, kind of records how many jokes are told on the call. So I've been amusing myself by, like, figuring out who was the funniest. Well, it doesn't tell me who the funniest is, but it tells me who tells them maybe the least serious. So, you know, he has this call recording feature, and that's what he figured out, which is highly amusing, right, to all of us. But maybe not the best, you know, case. So if you are helping train students about how to use this stuff in the classroom, they're going to come in and immediately give some good ideas to their boss. They're going to turn into a hero. And that's, I think, what we're all looking for, right? We're all looking for use cases that you know, that are impactful, where we can truly leverage this stuff and no one really knows what's going on. So faculty, I think that, you know, if you want to prepare your students, yeah, they need to be familiar with what this is, but, you know, just on a day-to-day basis, how is it a part of what they do? And I think that will really benefit themselves and the organizations that they go into.
I think, Kelly, just to put a bow on that, you said that AI, and you've said it several times, it will remove some of the mundane jobs and the swivel chair and so on. And I think, Rob, when that comes back to what we need to do in the classroom, it's not just teaching about Gen AI and its uses and how to use it properly, but it's actually to think about how we teach higher order thinking skills and analytical skills, because if the AI is going to do the boring stuff, you've got to be able to do the strategy development and so on, and the things that require actual analytical skills. So I think it's going to be an interesting balance between really promoting them while also making them aware of trends and how to use and have them use it creatively and properly.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point, Breffney. Yep. Love it.
It's a big lift, but Kelly, thank you so much for kind of
Pleasure.
bringing this home, especially bringing it back into the classroom, and for being the first of our expert speakers in our expert series. And you always are an expert, and it's great to interact with you. And I thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Much appreciated, and a wonderful way to spend an hour.
Thank you. My pleasure.